Hello and welcome. It looks like we are live, and today I am delighted to be chatting to two amazing lecturers from the Nutrition Network's most recent course that is going to be launching at the end of October, called Exercise for the Prevention and Treatment of Disease. So please, everybody, go sign up. If you do so before the launch date, you will get 20% off the course. And the two lecturers I have with me today are Dr. Laurie Rauch and Dr. Hassina Kajee. So welcome to both of you. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much, Tamzyn. I think Laurie might have just, we've lost him, but I am very excited. I'm very excited about this course, and thank you so much for.
Thank you. Thank you, Hassina. So I can't wait to get into the meat of today's discussion. But before we do, I am your host, Tamzyn Murphy, and I also happen to be one of the lecturers on the training. So I look forward to teaching you more about adaptation to a low carbohydrate or therapeutic carbohydrate restricted diet while adopting or continuing an exercise routine. But first, I want to start by telling you a little bit more about this exercise module, exercise training. So Exercise for the Prevention and Treatment of Disease is a comprehensive multi-lesson training program designed to transform your clinical practice by integrating exercise as a key component in the prevention and treatment of chronic disease. So this is not a sports nutrition training. We have already got a sports nutrition training. This is not about making athletes perform better. This is about harnessing the incredible power of exercise in your day-to-day practice for the benefit of the patients or the clients in front of you. The training begins with the foundational concepts of cardiorespiratory fitness, which we have got expert Dr. Laurie Rauch speaking to us a little bit about some of what he lectures on in the training. Cardiorespiratory fitness is really, really important. Also, the training speaks about movement competency and building towards more advanced topics such as personalized exercise prescription and the integration of exercise within medication management, as well as considerations for diverse patient populations. So once you have done this training, you should really be able to look at the patient in front of you, assess them. What kind of exercises can or should they be doing? How do you integrate that into the person in front of you? So really, really practical how-to training of integrating exercise into your practice. Through a combination of evidence-based strategies, practical case studies, and interactive learning, you will gain the tools to effectively incorporate exercise into your patient care, leading to improved outcomes and enhanced quality of life. Whether you're seeking to earn continuing education credits, which you can do with this course, or simply aiming to elevate your practice, this training will empower you to make a lasting impact on your patient's health. And as I said before, if you sign up now, before the launch date at the end of October, you will get 20% off. Okay. So now, the two lecturers I have with me here today, I'm going to start by introducing Dr. Hassina Kajee. In the training, Dr. Kajee speaks about the benefits and risks of exercise. Dr. Kajee specialized as an internist and then landed her dream job heading up the high care unit of a teaching hospital, Grooteskier, within South Africa. And as her patient population became younger and more patients were being admitted with chronic disease, some under the age of 30, she realized that she needed to evolve her practice, and she embarked on a journey to empower patients and healthcare providers alike with nutrition and lifestyle education in order to transform their health. And thus it was that she co-founded Nutrition Network, which is our educational platform, which has been really instrumental in bringing keto education to thousands of healthcare practitioners and nutrition advisors across the globe. So now she also sees patients in her private practice. She's a mom to 2 low-carb kiddies and a wife to 1 low-carb emergency physician. And her message of compassion and understanding really is a lesson for us all. So welcome, Dr. Kajee.
Thanks so much, Tamzyn.
Then we have Dr. Laurie Rauch. He gives two lectures in this training. The first is on his personal journey of reclaiming his cardiorespiratory fitness. Hopefully he'll give us a little bit of a window into this during this brief live today. It's a really, really interesting story. And then in his second lecture, he speaks about what cardiorespiratory fitness is and how to get there and the impact it has on our metabolic and overall health. Now, Dr. Rauch is an adjunct senior lecturer at the Department of Human Biology at the University of Cape Town. He teaches both undergraduate and postgraduate students, and he supervises MSc and PhD students as well in their research projects, ranging on a broad array of topics from relational health to weight loss, sleep and spinal cord injuries, functional MRI, cardiovascular function, heart rate variability, cognitive function, and EEG. So a lot of topics there. In recent years, Laurie has dedicated his time to sharing his personal journey and academic findings, professional experience as well, to a range of audiences around the world. And his focuses are threefold. Firstly, he shares his sporting experiences from his triathlon, cycling, rugby, and rock climbing days. And then the second thing is that he shares his experiences in regaining his health after his accident. And the third thing that Dr. Rauch shares is his 25 years of conducting health science research at UCT through his academic and mainstream presentations, lectures, and workshops. His particular interest, though, lies in the autonomic nervous system and more than a decade of academic research and practice into understanding the neural underpinnings of composure. In other words, what happens inside the heart and brain and body of a person who's performing at their peak. All right, so I think let's dive straight in. Welcome to both of you. I think we can start with you, Dr. Kajee. Can you tell us about why we get sick and what the role of exercise is in the prevention and reversal of the diseases that plague modern society?
Thanks, Tamzyn. What a huge topic, and really one that I've also found so much research around concepts that I didn't previously know before. And so in health, we have concepts of prevention. So there's primary prevention, secondary prevention, and tertiary prevention. And primary prevention, and I don't want to get the definitions wrong, so basically it's if you want to take advanced measures against possible or probable disease. So in that case, exercise would be a tool to prevent a disease from possibly or probably occurring. And then we've got the concept of secondary prevention. And here we have a situation where the patient has developed disease, but it's at the moment asymptomatic. And so we want to now initiate exercise to prevent that disease from becoming symptomatic. And then there's tertiary prevention. That's when you've already got your established disease, and now we want to prevent this disease from worsening or causing death. So of course, all forms of prevention are also to prevent death. But really, the concept that I want to drive home is the modern disease of physical inactivity, because research shows that the concept of physical inactivity in causing disease and then the concept of physical activity in reversing disease, they are not parallel. They're actually anti-parallel. They work by completely different mechanisms. So for example, they've been like when Yuri Gagarin in 1961, when man first was able to leave our sort of gravity filled Earth. And then NASA realized that these astronauts were in contact with micro anti-gravity sort of environments. And they found that there was a huge dysfunction or decrease in functionality from that. So a lot of studies happened, a plethora of research that went into, for example, there's the bed rest study, there are sitting studies, and all of these studies show that sedentary lifestyle shows a decrease in functionality from almost immediately. As little as 1 hour of inactivity can start to show arter- uh, dysfunction and remodeling within the arterioles. And then when you take these patients and then you now institute physical activity, the genes that were tested before in the period of activity and then the genes that are tested after, they're two different sets of genes. So not to make it too complicated, but the point I'm trying to drive home is physical activity is one disease of modern society that, as a standalone concept, is contributing to ill health. Then, of course, we're the nutrition network, and so we teach nutrition science. So then we look at all of the other modern diseases like food and inflammation, and all of these come together to cause disease. So my talk looks at all the things that cause disease and then the role that exercise has in the various processes to improve and reverse that disease.
Wow, that's fascinating and quite complicated. I can definitely see why we can't get into it in its full depth in a short live like we have today. But it sounds like physical activity itself has benefits for health, but sedentary lifestyle, even you say 1 hour of sitting or being sedentary, has deleterious effects that are separate to the benefits of actually activity itself. So we almost need to look, I'm sure you've heard of the phrase, sitting is the new smoking. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. I mean, when you look at obviously, as we grow, as we age, we've got different processes going on in concert with sitting. And when we look at the amount of movement and walking our ancestors did hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years ago, there is a steep decline in the amount of movement that we do. Even changing channels. Even for the couch potatoes, you no longer have to get up. In our day as children, you had to go and then you had to turn the dial or press the button, and all the siblings fought about whose turn it was to change the channel, and we don't have that anymore. So when we look at just the combination of what we're facing, it helps us to realize that we have to become so much more mindful about how we live. The waking hours are meant to be movement hours. And then even if you look at, sleep research, and there's a specified amount of hours per individual for optimal health. And when you go over that time, more is not more. When you go over that time, it actually starts to show a decline in your functionality. So, you look at the blood flow, Laurie's going to talk about cardiorespiratory fitness. You look about how strong the heart is. You look at the muscles, specifically the muscles as an endocrine organ, and how much how vital they are at keeping us healthy. And when you have a situation where you're sedentary, then you're not giving those muscles all the various fibers and the blood flow within those muscles and the organelles. You're not giving them a chance to be at their prime.
Wow, I think there's so much to dive into there. But before I move on to, obviously we don't have time to do that, although I might come back to muscles and endocrine organ if we do have time for that, because that's fascinating. You hear about adipose tissue as an endocrine organ, right? But you don't really hear muscles and endocrine organs. So I'm very excited to actually cover that if we have time. But before we move on to Laurie and Dr. Rauch, and basically cardiorespiratory fitness, and start exploring that, I just want to end with one question, Hassina, because it sounds like what you're saying is that, what you said was the waking hours are movement hours. But people, the majority, or a huge portion of the population across the world, don't do physically active jobs. And you have to work from 9 to 5, it's an 8-hour job. So that precludes human health. Is there any hope? Is there any hope? What can people do, Dr. Kajee?
So one thing you can do is obviously try and keep your movement up as much as possible. So for example, standing while working instead of sitting, if it is at all possible. Now, many people wear wearables. I wear an Oura Ring. People wear Fitbits and Apple Watches and Garmins, and these are great because it gives you a little indicator to say, oh, do you want to stretch your legs a bit? And I often laugh about around the time of COVID, when everybody was in their homes and having to clean after themselves and no help and doing so much. And I looked at my step count and realized how boosted it was. And I thought, there's a silver lining here. And I don't think many people realize that when they're on their feet the whole day, what benefit that is in terms of activity. Now, having said that, there's a huge difference between exercise and physical activity. So one part of it is that you do need to keep yourself active more of the time. And so there are other things you can do. You could set a timer, but you have to be mindful and diligent about this. And I would, for example, do split squats or push-ups on the floor, and you really just have to get to it if you're sitting for periods of time, and not just get into that phase, because it's unfortunately not enough. The amount of exercise you have to do, the recommended is 150 minutes to 300 a week. So if you're sitting for long periods of time, the amount of exercise you're going to have to do to sort of overcome the negatives of the sedentary lifestyle, it's way higher than just normal physical activity, and still it wouldn't be enough to reverse the damage done. So the most important thing is take breaks, walk around, don't be shy about it, get people involved, and it's entirely possible.
Okay, and consider standing. I see a lot of people in the health space now even have they work from their treadmills, for example, from their step machines, But if people are sitting or just standing even, how often should they take a break, do you think, and do push-ups?
At least every hour. But the other things you can do, you can get resistance bands, put them around your ankles and move them around. You can have little hand weights, but it's really important to break those long sort of sitting. You can learn to squat and try and see if you can work while squatting, because that's helpful. But I think just being mindful about it suddenly and realizing the great harm associated with sedentary lifestyle, we don't talk about that enough. As soon as you realize, wow, that's not good for me at all, and I'm getting older, and it's not good for our children either. So this is across the board. It's not just with adults and older adults, it's with children as well, because children need a lot more movement than we do as adults.
Absolutely. That's a fascinating topic. Thank you so much, Dr. Kajee. Dr. Rauch, can you tell us about this cardiorespiratory fitness? It's a very big term. What does it even mean? And then why is it important to us? Oh, I think you might be muted. There we go.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, thanks. That's a very, very, very good question. And I just want to jump in with what Hassina was saying about Yuri Gagarin and about inactivity, because, I was completely paralyzed for like a full month. I couldn't move a single muscle. And then after that, about another 4 months.
Dr. Rauch, I'm going to interrupt you there, because I actually think maybe I asked the wrong question. Maybe I should start with the question of, because people don't know why were you completely inactive? Maybe start with us there and then build up.
Yeah, sure. I was training for triathlon for the South African Championships, and I got knocked by a drunken container truck driver from the back, which caused 3 disabilities after that. The first injury, I broke my neck at C3 from the impact. Then I somersaulted over my handlebars on the bike, and I fell on my head without a helmet, so I got very severe traumatic brain injuries. And then I fell on my back as well, which I broke three vertebrae. And then 10 days after the accident, my right leg was amputated above the knee because the truck rode into the knee, into my leg, and it caused a lot of damage. Eventually, I had to amputate the leg. So I was sitting with 3 major disabilities. Like, I think the worst one was the brain injury, then the spinal injury, my neck was broken, and then the leg is like almost like the least of the injuries, my amputation. But all 3 combined also makes it very difficult. But yeah, so I was basically like in bed for about 5 months. I lost all my muscle, everything, nothing, my core muscles, my adductors, my abductors, everything was just gone. And then I had to like start getting fit again. And before my accident, I was in the 100th percentile, and that was my cardiorespiratory fitness. So that's your ability to get oxygen to your muscle. That's like the base measure of cardiorespiratory fitness. It's like in a car, the bigger your engine is, the more oxygen you need to run that engine, and more powerful it is. So the more oxygen your muscles can consume, the more powerful your muscles are. And my oxygen consumption is very high. So I say I was probably in the 100th percentile of people on Earth. But then after my accident, when I couldn't move a single muscle, I was like on the less than 0 percentile because I couldn't contract any muscles, so I couldn't use any oxygen. So I was just on baseline, sort of my baseline METs, which is like sort of you measure it in METs, metabolic equivalents. Mine was on probably like sort of 0.9, not even 1, and 1 is your basic function. Anyway, so that's and I always, because I was so cardiorespiratory fit, you always felt healthy, and you could always, every time I get sick, you'd shake it off very quickly because of this cardiorespiratory fitness. So that's really, I'm very passionate about this, and I took steps to try and regain my cardiorespiratory fitness as soon as possible. And then I overdid it at times. I pushed too hard. So if your engine is like, obviously my engine is like much reduced now because I had all these injuries, so I had to cut back on the amount of work I could do. Like on a bicycle, I had to cut back my workload quite dramatically. So my engine wasn't as powerful anymore. And then I had to measure my, if I overdid it, I'd get sick. So I had to really work out how I could push myself, and what I could still use from before my accident. The type of things I could use. And I found that the 2 things I could use was what I call big match temperament. So that's like, it's almost like you've got to be single-minded focused of what you're trying to do, or single-minded instruction to your body. And you also got to be wholeheartedly invested. So if you get those 2 things correct, you've got a goal, you set yourself a single-minded instruction to your body. You're going to do this cycle race, and you do it in this time. That's the instruction to your body. And also you've got to believe it wholeheartedly that you can actually meet that challenge. But if there's a mismatch, if you like set the goal too high, then your heart knows there's no ways I can do that. You're gonna sort of split your heart and your brain. So I thought that was, and before my accident, that really was what worked the best. When you like got that right, your goal you set, and your belief that you can achieve that goal. Once that matches, you go into that zone performance where you know you're going to perform at that level that you set yourself. So that I found was almost the only thing I could take forward after my accident, was this big match temperament, wholehearted, and single-minded. And then, so that's really what it boils down to, is that any cardiorespiratory exercise you do, any like Hassina was saying, any exercise you can do. Sitting in the office, I just, on my chair, I'd sit upright, and I'd actually sit like I do with cross-legged sitting. I sit in my chair, so you can still use your core muscles all the time, activated. So when you feel you've got too much stress in your heart, you even sit up more straight and just do like a couple of rotations in your spine. And brilliant, if you can get up every hour to go and move, when you go and get coffee, you can walk with purpose and be in your body, get out of your head. And that's all going to then make your muscles stronger. It's going to activate your mitochondria, give you which is your basic unit of cardiorespiratory fitness, and your mitochondria specifically in your muscle, because that's the one that's going to extract the oxygen which you breathe. It's going to generate what's called ATP. It's like a molecule in your leg, in the mitochondria. That's the energy sort of equivalent. So the more ATP you've got, the more you can do. And then the faster you can race, and the more fit you are, basically. And the fitter you are, the lesser your risk of any I think across the board, all-cause mortality, cardiovascular disease, coronary heart disease, even, like stroke, you name it. Almost every disease process and mortality, obviously, the risk goes down. The greater your cardiorespiratory fitness, the less your risk. And one of the best measures of cardiorespiratory fitness is a low resting heart rate. So that's what I always work on, is try and get your resting heart rate as low as possible. And throughout your day, try and keep your heart rate as low as possible. Don't get worked up. Obviously, when you exercise, it's different, so you're going to get it up for that while. But then straight after exercise, you want to get it low as possible again. And just to be as calm and composed as possible, keep calm throughout your day, keep your heart rate low. Then you'll keep your cardiorespiratory fitness, you'll keep improving it, and then you also keep decreasing your risk for all disease, all-cause mortality.
Sure. So you've also touched on a lot there as well. So I'm going to ask two questions. One is, what heart rate should your average Joe Soap, your average person, not an athlete, just a normal person, what should they be aiming for? And is there a difference between men and women? So if we have our listeners here who are just normal people who work 9-to-5 jobs, maybe they walk, maybe they do a little bit of body weight training, maybe, but now they want to live a healthier life. So they want to get fit and they want to see, okay, well, let me see if what my cardiorespiratory fitness is, which is based on my heart rate. What are they aiming for, Dr. Rauch?
I think that, they always talk about the 72 as sort of your heart rate you should be aiming for. And that's probably a good starting point. If you can try and get your heart rate below 70, great. But the cutoff point where it becomes dangerous is over 90. So if your resting heart is over 90, then that's associated with increased risk for all-cause mortality and for disease processes. So I think as a start, try and get it, aim for the 70. Minute, right? Yeah, beats per minute, yeah. So aim for the 70. And then, but the lowest you can go, if you can get it to in your 60s, that's in your 60s, you're almost like at the same risk as in your 50s. If you go below 50, then it's very good. But that's, again, like athletes can get it below 50 into the 40s and even below 40. But that's like just if you're athlete. And the beautiful thing about cardiorespiratory fitness is that even if you increase your cardiorespiratory fitness by 1 percentage point, you're going to decrease your risk. So in my one lecture, I show that even if you go up from the 97th percentile, that's now taking the world's population. If you're in the 97th percentile, so your cardiorespiratory fitness is 97% of people your cardiorespiratory fitness is greater than 70% of the population on Earth. If you go up from 97 to 99, if you're in the 99th percentile, like some of those, those Tour de France cyclists, they're probably all in the 100th percentile. But so if you increase from 98 to 99, your relative risk decreases. So it's really, it's like every percentage point you can improve, decrease. You can never run out of benefit. Yeah.
Can you ever be too fit?
Well, you can never be too fit, but the thing is, you also got to watch, because sometimes people, they overdo it and then they get like an enlarged heart. So you can push your exercise too much. But I'm talking specifically about your cardiorespiratory fitness. And that's determined by your resting heart rate, by your parasympathetic nervous system, not going too sympathetic, always like maintaining a calm, keeping calm throughout the day. But you also need to do high intensity exercise in order to up it to 100%. But then you got to measure it. Don't overdo it. Don't push more than your body can stand, because then it can become toxic, as I also mentioned in my lecture. You don't want to exercise that you actually starts breaking down your body. It's always got to build up. You always want to improve your cardiorespiratory fitness. So there's a distinction between your cardiorespiratory fitness and your physical activity. So if you do 10 hours a day, like I used to do, it can get extreme. You can still improve your cardiorespiratory fitness, but if you do 10 hours of exercise, but your cardiorespiratory fitness is not going up, it's actually going down because you're overdoing it, then that's bad. That's always the gold standard, is always your cardiorespiratory fitness, which is the amount of oxygen you can take up per minute, and it's per kilogram body mass. So that is the gold standard measurement of cardiorespiratory fitness.
Okay, and then the average person can just measure their heart rate, and if they're below 60, they're really, really, really fit and they have low risk. And if they are below 72, they're looking quite healthy. And if they are above 90, they need to do something about it. And even if they can reduce it by 1%, they're going to see a reduction in their health risks going forward. Now, Dr. Rauch, how can people get their cardiorespiratory fitness up? Do they do that by running, or must they do like lift weights, or how do they improve their cardiorespiratory fitness?
Yeah, there's two things. The one is to increase your power in your muscle, and you can do that with, even just walking to start off with. And I actually started out just cross-legged sitting, just to strengthen my core muscles. Because if you activate the muscle, whatever muscle it is, you're going to increase the mitochondrial density, and it's going to increase your cardiorespiratory fitness. But obviously, it's like you want to start doing more intense exercise, because that requires you to have more whole body increase in muscle capacity. And you can do it with weightlifting, with running, cycling. But so the best form of exercise, actually, that's what they call locomotor exercise, which is like across your spine, like walking, running, cycling, swimming, paddling, anything that goes across your body, and like sort of you can do without thinking. It's like a very sort of look at the animal in raw nature when they walk or run. It's like a beautiful movement around their spine. So those kind of movements where you don't think about it, you're just in your body and you can just let your muscles do the talking kind of thing. That's going to increase your cardiorespiratory fitness quite a lot. Sorry, you said why?
Sorry, I said why. Why are those movements around the spine particularly beneficial?
Because you've got what's called the central pattern generator, which in your spine is built in. So that almost does the exercise for you. So you can almost like stand on a treadmill being fast asleep, and you can obviously tie you in, whatever, and you'll be able to, your legs will do that. It'll keep walking on that same speed as a treadmill. So it's like it's a built-in program, and that enables you to switch off your thinking. I think that's key to good health, is to not have a busy brain. So you've got to minimize your thoughts, just get back in your body, and if you get back in your body, you can do it much easier when you do this locomotive form of exercise, which is walking. You don't have to think. You can just walk. You can just run. It's like something you can do without thinking. If you do think, sometimes you actually like become worse. If you start thinking about when you're running, you start tripping. So it's like something just to get completely out of your head, into your spine, and that beautiful movement. Then you can release all the correct chemicals like serotonin, dopamine. So it's like those are the ones that really you want to keep sort of at the maximum. If you decrease your cortisol, it's like it's just insulin also. You don't want to have too much insulin. So it's like a very good way to balance the chemicals in your body and to increase your cardiorespiratory fitness. And then the other point is your body fat, because that's what your body fat does. It actually uses a lot of oxygen to keep it going, because you've got extracellular matrix that keeps the fat in place. The bigger your fat cells is, the more oxygen it requires to keep that fat cell healthy, to stop it from becoming inflamed. So you're actually wasting a lot of oxygen, because that oxygen is like, it's almost like oxygen you're not using to exercise, you're using it to keep your fat stores healthy. So it's like that's going to decrease your cardiorespiratory fitness, because you're not able to do any work with it. You're just maintaining your fat cells. So that's a waste of oxygen. So you want to try and minimize your fats, and the more you minimize your fat, the more you can use that oxygen as keeping your fat going, or keeping your fat cells healthy, to actually produce functional activity and to be able to do exercise and just your daily activities of living. So those are the two things that you've got to watch out for, is that, or focus on: decreasing your body fat and increasing your mitochondrial density with any form of locomotor exercise. But gym is also, if you can strengthen your muscles, then you got to use your core muscles. Use your core muscles, keep that strong. Don't ever put a belt around your stomach when you do weights. You always got to keep your core active and alive. Then you can use more functional movements.
Okay, and that makes sense because the core really and those repetitive around the spine kind of movements would be the movements we would have been doing throughout human history or evolution. So they are very natural kind of movements. You always need your core. Do you think, Dr. Kajee, do you think that the prevalence, especially amongst men, I find, of lower back pain is linked to the fact that we're not able to do functional movements anymore? We have weak cores. We don't do this like rotation around the spine stuff.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that sedentary lifestyle that we were talking about earlier, I've recently started doing something called Turkish get-ups, which is sort of a great equalizer because I can do quite a lot of weight in my lower legs and moderate amount in my upper body. Obviously, the legs more than the arms in terms of the amount of weight that I can lift. And I thought my core was pretty strong. But when you do a Turkish get up, it is a whole body movement. So those of you who don't know about it, just Google it. And it's not right now, maybe later, but it's a whole body movement that requires you to hold up a kettlebell or a weight, and then use your core to lift yourself up and get up on one knee and then very slowly reverse that. And in itself, it's meditative, it's slow. And it showed me just the link between, we're not just arms and legs, we're one organism. So really, I think it's a combination. And what Laurie said, just such amazing points, like the visceral fat that's lying there. It makes me think of a freezer full of food and you've got load shedding, and you have to still use your power to keep that freezer going and you're not using it. But I wanted to just make a few points around what was said just now, just in terms of what Laurie said about his accident and being at peak performance. There's a concept that I speak about in my talk, and I've mentioned before, called hormesis. And this is the way our body works is that in order for us to be at optimal levels, we do need some form of stress, good stress. Not the type of chronic mental overload that we have, but the exercise stress. And yes, some mental stress is good. Think about just before an exam. But that hormesis in various ways basically helps our mitochondria to adapt and to be able to, after some sort of accident, our tissues are so efficient at using oxygen. The heart is so efficient at pumping that it has to pump so little that is really key at recovery. It's one of the key features that helps a person who is fit accident or pre-event to recover faster. And they've even showed this in people with myocardial infarction who've got this minor stress. And you can also get it from things like caloric restriction, time restricted eating, fasting. A ketogenic diet stimulates mitomesis. And then the other thing I wanted to just say is a funny story, that when I was running my high care unit one evening, we had an athlete who had come in, and I looked at his monitor and his heart rate was like 29. It might even have been in the coronary care unit, and he was beating at 29 beats per minute. And that just shows you that somebody with a heart, the muscle to understand that is that the heart is so efficient, it's so strong that it doesn't have to do this. It can do that and then rest and expand and do that again. And that is the efficiency that Laurie was talking about with that cardiorespiratory fitness. And then one last concept is the concept of over-exercising. That is something that I think that what we do as modern human beings, those who like to exercise, perhaps we have sedentary jobs, and then a lot of type A people specifically don't know how to rest. The muscles are made up of different types of fibers. And so endurance types of exercise would work the slow fibers, and then things like high intensity interval training would work the fast twitch fibers. And so we need to be able to build up both of those fibers, but it's as easy as feeling like, oh, I've lifted a weight, my arm is really sore. That means I've actually got micro tears within that muscle. It now has to heal and become bigger. So if I do the same thing tomorrow, I'm not actually helping that muscle to heal. And in the same way, people can overdo it and cause a lot of inflammation in the body and not get enough sleep to help with that repair that happens in deep sleep. And they're not eating the right nutrients in their food, not enough good fat, not enough good protein, and instead they're having a lot of inflammation producing non-foods or franken foods. And all of that can be very dangerous. So I just wanted to make a point about that.
Thank you. And Dr. Kajee, with regards to this over-exercising, I just wanted to emphasize that we're not necessarily saying that these are necessarily athletes who just overdo it, a bit like Dr. Rauch was maybe cycling 10 hours a day. What about your sedentary patient who has metabolic conditions and stuff going on, excessive body weight? They want to start exercising. Is there a risk of over exercising in them where they can actually cause joint damage, tendon damage, injuries to their hips or to their rotator cuff or whatever it is? Even with doing 10 minutes of exercise a day, how do we know what is appropriate for the person in front of us or for ourselves if we're coming from a sedentary background? What are the risks? What do we do?
Well, I speak about this in my talk, and there are screening tools that are available that I will share that people can use to screen for somebody who just wants, types of questions like how much activity do you have? Do you get any chest pain? Do you get short of breath? And there's some screening tools that can help you to say very easily that this person is cleared for physical activity. And then depending on, how overweight they are, you would start slowly and increase incrementally. So 10 minutes a day of walking and being aware. One vital thing is that the rate of cellular turnover of all our different tissues is different. So the turnover of the tendon is way longer, I think like 3 months, than the turnover of muscle cells. And so people can start to get very addicted to this endorphin boost that you get with physical activity, and you have this sort of physical activity culture, and now people are doing something, and for a month you feel like, hey, I'm doing so great, I'm going to push myself a little bit further, and their tendons haven't turned over. It's still the old tendons with new muscles, if that makes sense. And so those tendons don't support that extra strength that the muscle is now able to do. And that's where people get a lot of problems. So the idea is to screen, to make sure your patients are safe, to give appropriate exercise. And a lot of people want to know what's the best exercise. The best exercise is the exercise you will do, whatever you will do. So if it's walking, if it's weights, whatever it is that you can do in your day-to-day is the best type of exercise.
Thank you. That's really, really helpful. So I see we've had lots of comments in the comments section, from Anne and from Ian and from Manju. You guys have all we really appreciate your comments, and you make some really good points about the importance of rest, how useful certain like kettlebell swinging can be and things like that. So we really appreciate your insights in that regard. I see we've lost Dr. Rauch, because I did want to ask him a question about stress. He keeps referring to how stress is really a problem within exercise. But I think I'll wait for him to come back to talk a little bit more about that. There we go. He's back. Good. Dr. Rauch, just in time. I wanted to ask you, you keep mentioning the importance of moderating stress during the day, but how obviously when you're exercising, your heart rate's going to go up. So I assume that kind of stress is fine. Why is stress important within this exercise concept? Where surely it's a different thing. Yes, stress of itself, raises cortisol, makes you unhealthy if you have very long exposure to that. How does exercise and stress and that all tie in to fitness, cardiorespiratory fitness, and metabolic health?
Yeah, I mean, it comes down to you've got to be in use stress. So if you have too little stress, like when I was lying in bed, you got no stress. You're just lying there, but you're getting worse and worse. So it's like you've got to find the right balance. And the amazing thing is that your parasympathetic nervous system, which is your vagal nerve, which is rest and digest, which is the one that slows your heart rate down, those nuclei, they actually don't fire by themselves. The nuclei, the cells itself, they need input from the sympathetic nervous system. And the sympathetic nervous system, they always, you can say always alive, they're always firing, always, because it's a survival mechanism. So they always got to be, they got intrinsic activity. Just like your heart will, if you take your heart out of the chest cavity, it will still beat by itself. It's got intrinsic activity. So your sympathetic nervous system has got intrinsic activity. And the greater your sympathetic activity, the more powerful your vagal nerve will become. So it's almost like you need the input from your sympathetic drive to strengthen your rest and digest system. So that's like the thing of being composed. It's actually like and that's being in the zone. It's like you've got so much stress, but you can be so much more calm because you've got so much energy from your sympathetic nervous system. And those are the top athletes. They just completely in the zone when there's so much stress that they almost like they just got that fraction of a second. They can perform. They can make a decision that much quicker because they're completely calm, even though it's high pressure. And that's really what it's about. It's like you've got to use your energy in your body to calm you down. So I mean, the example I always use is like your heart. If you can, the more adrenaline you've got, the greater your contractility of your heart can be. So you can pump that much quicker. But there's also the other thing is that the greater your adrenaline is, the quicker your heart can relax as well. It's like let's call it lusotropy. So you've got inotropy, which contracts, which increases your contractility of your heart. And the opposite of that is like how quickly can you relax your heart. And Hassina mentioned that about that athlete that was the resting heart rate of 29. And that's what happens if you can relax your heart. I mean, it contracts, but you very quickly relax the muscle. Then you've got a long time to fill up. Your cardiac filling can be so much longer, fill the heart up completely before you take the next beat. And then it's a very healthy heart. It's like it relaxes quickly and it can contract quickly as well. But to get the balance right, that's very important. And as you get older, it's amazing because actually as you get older, your lusotropy, the fitter you get, or if you're fit when you're old, you're able to relax your heart much quicker. But you're not able to almost contract your heart as much. The older you are, you haven't got that pure contractile speed to contract the muscle, but you certainly have got the capacity to relax your heart very quickly. I think that's maybe like something to take note of and actually try and work on that, just to try and get your heart rate down as quickly as possible. And you can do that with like a deep breath, or just if you're cardiacally fit, you can get your heart rate down quite quickly. So that's really it's a dynamic balance, and the stronger your sympathetic drive is, the more powerful your vagal nerve will be. And that's your vagal nerve is your heart healthy nerve.
So can I ask a quick question, Laurie? So because this is something I'm so interested in. So are you saying that when for more hours in the day, you're activating your sympathetic nervous system sort of artificially through chronic stress, you're getting an overuse of your sympathetic, but you're not balancing it enough with your parasympathetic. So if you limit the sympathetic spikes by actively engaging parasympathetic, that you're strengthening that, you're sort of mindfully strengthening that vagal nerve. Am I understanding that correctly?
Yes, that's absolutely correct. It's just a matter of, it's like that, the composure. So it's like that, but it takes, it takes enormous amount of discipline, because you've got to be in that big match temperament, and you've got to stop thinking. Actually, the amazing, they call it the orienting response. The moment you think of something, I forgot this. Now I've got it, my cell phone, whatever. Then you've lost the moment. It's almost like, so you literally can't think of anything else except the moment you're in, what you're doing at the moment now. Like you can think when Andre Pollard's got a kick for the goalpost in the World Cup final, he can't think of anything else. It's just in that moment, and that's the big match temperament. And that's a lot of stress. He's completely stressed out, but because he's focused on that one thing, all that stress goes into his vagus nerve to bring that calmness in his heart. Then you can perform at a high level in the most extreme stress. And if you can practice that in your day, like when you're stressed at work, absolutely, if you can tap into that, like channel that energy into the vagal nerve, then you've got a winning recipe.
Awesome.
Wow.
Thank you.
So you do that by doing like deep breathing or humming or anything that activates the vagus nerve. Is that right, Dr. Rauch?
Well, you see, the deep breathing, it's like you've got to understand where the deep breathing comes from. So if you're deep breathing from your head, if you think about it, then you're doing it wrong. But you can also breathe from your neck. There's like your spine. There's always bring your spine in. I think it's C5. I speak on the correction, but C5 I think connects to the diaphragm. So if you can do diaphragmatic breathing without thinking about it, but that takes, you generally do use your body to do that, like optimal movement. So if you sit up straight and your diaphragm is free, and you almost like subconsciously like sort of know when you're aware of when you're breathing correctly, when you're not breathing correctly, then yes, you can use your breath. But generally it's used movement, like sort of this locomotor type movement to actually like tap into like the vagal system. And you actually use your blood pressure regulation, so it's your baroreflex that then goes to the heart and to your blood pressure. So, but yeah, it is. Breathing was very, very, very good if you can do it without thinking too much about it.
Wow, that's really interesting. So that brings us back again to not only is that locomotor kind of walking or whatever other activity that you can zone out while you're doing, not only is that important for just cardiorespiratory fitness, but it's important for the hypothalamic pituitary axis, the stress response, your vagal tone, and basically your ability to handle stress and your resilience to stress when you're in very stressful situations, even if that means you're in the emergency unit or whatever it is, or just a really, really stressful situation, a traumatic event or whatever it is that happens. So that's really interesting. And again, I think it goes to show how exercise and movement is really one of the key pillars of human health, alongside diet and enough sleep and those kind of things. I did want to, before we go, there are a few questions. I do want to get to that, but before we get to, I know we've got very little time left, but I know you touched on aging, Dr. Rauch, and I know that Dr. Kajee also has a great interest in the role of aging and physical activity and health. Dr. Kajee, is there any word that you want to leave us with regarding people as they get older and the effect of exercise, the importance of exercise, and must exercise be changed as you get older to kind of deal with things like aches and pains and reduced muscular strength or heart's ability to contract or all those kind of things?
Absolutely. Beautiful question, Tamzyn. So when it comes to aging, the one thing to think about is, I wish I was doing this 10 years before, because you don't want to pick it up 10 years later and go, oh, how much have I lost? Because we lose about 3 to 5% of our muscle from the time that we sort of mid-20s getting to the 30s. We're undergoing a process of sarcopenia, which is natural muscle loss. Can't do anything about it. You can, but it's going to happen. And then on top of that, we have the hormone changes in men and women. And, the hormones, for example, testosterone, which is so important for muscle building. And then for women, we start to lose our estrogen, and or lower the estrogen levels. And this is so important for joint mobility and, just well lubricated joints. And this is where a lot of women start to have difficulty. So my last words to everybody here is pick up weights. Don't be afraid of picking up weights. Yes, do the recommendations are for a certain amount of hours of moderate exercise or intense exercise a week. So 75 minutes of intense exercise. But if you do more, about 150 minutes, it's better for you. It's shown to improve your CRF. And then twice a week to do some sort of muscle building. I saw Ian had a comment there talking about doing kettlebells. I love kettlebells. Please, those of you who are looking into weights, start low, go slow, and then slowly pick it up. So you have to get your tendons in line with your muscles. And I have this issue where I try to do too much too soon, and then I get a sprain or something like that. And so I've had to learn, it's an ongoing, this type of thing. It's not like, I'm done, I'm going to do this exercise. You have to keep constant pace with your body. Like Laurie said, you have to train your body to do the breathing, and it's an ongoing sort of energy intense thing. It's the same with realizing, where am I? What do I need to do? If you're on your feet the whole day and maybe you need to work muscles and do less kind of endurance stuff. There was an interview with Bruce Fordyce and Prof. I feel like we should call him Sir Bruce Fordyce. But he spoke about the runners and how one of his bits of his advice was when they're preparing, that they shouldn't sit when they stop for their breaks in between. When they're doing their training, they should get time on the feet to be maximal. So I think it's all these little bits of advice, but really the muscle is golden. It is the quads, for example, is the organ of the muscle of longevity. We have to make sure that we're preserving as much muscle as we can. Don't forget the role of nutrition and good quality protein to feed that muscle after you've worked it. But that would be my long-winded answer.
Thank you so much. We do have 2 questions, so I'm wondering if you can just answer them very quickly. Dr. Rauch, the first one is from Anne Brennan, saying, after a long illness and in a normal person, how much exercise should they do, and when to start with that exercise?
Yeah, I think the answer to that is as quickly as possible, and what's in your capacity to do. Like when I started, I went straight into cycling and I overdid it, and that I got sick again. So eventually I learned I first had to work on my core muscles. So then I started cross-legged sitting. I think that's a very good exercise to start off with. It's just the cross-legged sitting for as long as possible. I mean, I was sitting for 4 hours a morning, and then my stomach muscles sort of started reappearing. And then you can start doing like sort of slow movement exercise. Like, I mean, yoga is good. Qigong, I also did, very good. Just to start, especially the Qigong, because that's like your cross-body locomotor kind of exercise. And you can look on the internet, they've got lots of movement videos on that. And then it's like, I think that next step would be walking. Once you've got enough muscle and you've built up, and you can start walking and just build up your speed and walking, and then to take it to slow jog and running, whatever, or paddling.
Thank you so much. I think that's a really great answer. Again, it's meeting the patient or the person where they are, building up slowly, not overdoing it, but being consistent, and starting as soon as possible. Then the other question is from Julio Catano, asking, within the context of LMHR, lean mass hyperresponders, so people who get very high, very, very high cholesterol levels when they go into a low carbohydrate, high fat diet. For these people, would it be better to exercise when fasted in the morning, or better to exercise, with fuel in them? Yeah, or do they, so basically, do they use their own body's fuel when they fasted? Is that better? Or do they want to use some kind of fuel like MCT oil, or even, caffeine or stimulants to help them achieve a better result? Do either of you know the answer to that question in this kind of phenotype, or this kind of patient population with high cholesterol eating a keto diet?
So the lean mass hyperresponder, I don't know if there's any particular answer, because obviously your own body is making the cholesterol. Your liver is producing it, and so in a fasted state, you're going to have more production of cholesterol naturally. But the one point I can make is it depends. In terms of, there are people who fast and are able to find that to be not a stressful exercise, such as myself. I am very comfortable, and I check that in terms of my heart rate doesn't like shoot up. When it does, of course, you want it to shoot up, but when it shoots up, if I'm doing high intensity exercise, I'm able to get it back down very quickly. And there's some people who are not able to do that. So from a stress perspective, it really depends on you as a person, what is comfortable for you. Be in touch with your own body mechanisms. If you're feeling extremely hungry, then it's probably, or if you're feeling extremely unsettled, your heart rate's going up, perhaps it's better for you to eat first, have a small meal prior, something like whey protein, brown chain amino acids or something like that, before, just before, or definitely very soon, within 30 minutes to about 2 hours after you've exercised. But I mean, that's as much as I can say about that. I don't know if Dr. Rauch.
I think we haven't got the evidence to be able to answer that question with any kind of certainty, I would say. So I totally agree. We can generalize and say things like, well, if you're trying to lose fat, it would be better to exercise when fasted than get your body to rely. So in other words, you're getting your body to rely on its own fuel stores, rather, like your fat, for example, rather than rely on external fuel stores. And in that case, also, there's some evidence to indicate that taking coffee before your morning exercise might even, I don't know, accelerate that fat loss to a certain degree. If you're taking MCT oil before exercise, then I would think and maybe caffeine also, you're looking more for the ergogenic or the performance benefits, if you would. So it depends what you're looking for. If you're looking for fat loss, then probably fasted with or without caffeine, depending on your tolerance. If you're looking to improve performance, then you're probably going to want to maybe add in caffeine. You're going to want to add in MCT oil. And if you're an athlete, then you can talk about very small amounts of carbohydrates in low carb people, just to keep the blood glucose level high enough that the brain doesn't bonk. But whether that's any different in an LMHR person or whether it's not, I don't know the answer to that. But I think it's a really good question, and maybe we'll have to get Dave Feldman here sometime to tell us if he's got any theories in that regard. But with that, it's going to have to be a wrap because we are out of time. I'm going to just briefly ask Dr. Kajee and Dr. Rauch to leave us with a very brief take-home sentence or two of what they think the most important thing that people need to remember about exercise for health. What is that thing that's most important to remember about exercise for health? Let's start with Dr. Rauch.
Yeah, I mean, my take would be that you must feel comfortable with the exercise, and you must actually enjoy it, and especially afterwards, just after, for as long as possible, so that you'll keep doing it, and you listen to your body. So you always, if you feel that you need energy, then I'd rather eat something. So it's better to exercise with enough glucose in your blood. Obviously not overdoing it, but the point is not to exercise when you're not feeling good, because then you actually might put yourself off. So you always got to make sure that you're enjoying your exercise. I think that's my take-home message.
Yeah, I think that's really important, because then you'll keep doing it, right? So do the exercise that you enjoy doing or you want to keep doing. That's key. Thank you so much, Dr. Rauch. Dr. Kajee.
So mine is very simple. Move now, move a lot, build muscle, work that muscle to exhaustion, then rest and feed the muscle, and then challenge yourself. Don't stay stuck at this level. If you walk X number of kilometers, push yourself a little bit more. If you lift X pounds of weight, push yourself a little bit more, and just have fun with it.
Thank you so much. I think everybody has learned so much. There's such a wealth of information just in this Facebook Live. Dr. Rauch, Dr. Kajee, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and your tips with our audience. And for everyone out there, if you want to find out more, the place to go is to this training where these lecturers, amongst others, give you step-by-step instructions on how to help yourself and your patients to prevent and treat disease using exercise. So please sign up. You'll get 20% off if you do that before the launch date at the end of October. Thank you all. Have a wonderful day or night wherever you are in the world. Goodbye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.